And to talk to us more about this, we have with us Pa Andreas Harsono, who is a former journalist and researcher at the Human Rights Watch. Pa, thank you so much for coming. Now, this recent incident in Papua, despite President Joko Widodo guaranteeing the safety of journalists over there, and also foreign media can go there, they keep on getting threatened, journalists in Papua. What's your opinion on this?
The situation in Papua is very complex. There are so many self-interest, business interests within the military, within the police, within intelligence community there, and also local official.
Okay.
It is so complex, and also journalists are there poorly paid, and they can easily be bribed, and the trust among native Papuan on Indonesian media is pretty low. That's why they are so hostile against Indonesian journalists in Papua.
Right, but President Joko Widodo, he said that he wants more people to cover Papua,
Yeah.
and he wants foreign media to go there, but they keep on getting threatened, so they're not being protected.
The reality on the grounds is foreign journalists are still restricted to go to Papua,
Okay, they're still restricted.
despite President Jokowi order that they should be free, like they are going to Bali or going to Bandung. They are also free to go to Papua. But until now, Jakarta-based foreign journalists are still restricted, are still required to apply for surat jalan if they want to go to Papua. So things are not getting better.
Right, but local media are allowed to go there, and in this recent case, from a local media station, was reporting on an election, but he got threatened, and it's been happening every single year. So
not every single year, every month, every other week, there is a threat against either Indonesian journalists or Papuan journalists.
Right,
it
so
happened.
Is this right?
It is wrong, obviously. I suggest the press council to meet President Jokowi and to discuss this. I also repeatedly told President Jokowi to issue a special presidential decree on journalism, on free media in Papua, to increase the quality of journalism in Papua. Because I believe the quality of journalism it is going to be better for the society. But if the journalism is getting lower, then the society is also getting lower.
Right, because they're not being protected. In this case, there was police present at the time when he was being threatened, but the police are too scared to protect him.
Well, that's what happened every now and then.
Right.
In your case, these journalists were threatened by indigenous Papuan, but in many other cases, they were also threatened by the military and the police.
Okay, right. So there was a law passed, the number 40, 1999 law that supposedly protects Indonesian journalists, and
I was involved in writing that law.
Right.
Yeah.
Right, and they have the right to report fairly and balanced.
Yep.
But they still get threatened.
Because at the same time, while we passed that very good law on media freedom, 1999, but since 1999 until now, there are hundreds and hundreds new articles in various laws, internet law, pornography law, local election law, presidential law, everything, which criminalize free speech. And the police and the prosecutors and many other people do that, misuse that article to prosecute not only journalists but also social media users. At the same time, we have a boom of cell phone. That's why more and more people are prosecuted, using Facebook, Twitter, maybe saying bad thing about their neighbor or their region or local official, got arrested.
So you're saying these laws of defamation are restricting the freedom of press, the freedom of speech in Indonesia.
Yes.
Now, since when were these laws against defamation created?
Mostly under President Yudhoyono. Mostly under President Yudhoyono. But lately, under President Jokowi, we also have seeing an increase of intimidation, harassment, and arrest against anyone who talk about 1965.
Okay. Now let's step back a bit. It's a different time from the Suharto administration when maybe the press was not so free. Now the press are more free to say what they want. But do you think Indonesian journalists are safe from risk now?
It is
How was
much
the
better.
situation in the past decade?
During the Suharto era, if you want to publish a newspaper, you have to get a license, and your license can be revoked. In a bid to get a license, you get to have a license for your chief editor, a license for your publisher, a license from the local journalist association, the local publishers association. There are so many, from the police, from the military, etc., etc. Of course, those licensing are gone now. It is about business. Setting up a business, you have to get up a license just for your business. So in that case, it is much freer today.
Right.
But over the last 15 years, we are seeing more and more articles discriminating free speech.
Right. So it's gotten worse.
Not as worse as the Suharto era, not as bad as the Suharto era, but it is getting worse. The best after the fall of Suharto was under President Abdurrahman Wahid.
Okay. And apart from this case in Papua, there's also a separate case where a journalist named Febriana Firdaus was expelled and got threatened for writing a symposium on
Intimidated, not
yeah,
threatened.
right.
Intimidation.
Yeah.
Yes, that's true. It is also another bad indicator regarding this 1965, because Febriana was there to cover things related to 1965 massacre. But again, she is not the only one. Over the last 2 years, from Ubud Writers Festival to film showing of Joshua Oppenheimer films, The Act of Killing or The Look of Silence, or someone who used a T-shirt saying PKI, but not Partai Komunis Indonesia, but Pecinta Kaos Indonesia, got arrested in Ternate. So those kind of things happening over the last 2 years.
Right. And is this threat against journalism, is it simply because of political reasons?
I think it is simply because people who were involved in the killing, in the mass killing, directly or indirectly, are nervous with President Jokowi trying to resolve past human rights abuses. That's why they make a lot of fuss, saying that there is a rise of communism, which is nonsense, or a lot of things, making nonsense, doing this so-called bela negara, at the same time threatening, intimidating anyone who would like to challenge their stance on 1965.
Now, what is the government doing about this? Because there was a law that was written to protect journalists, and President Joko Widodo is trying to guarantee safety, but it seems like they keep on getting threatened and intimidated. Now, what is the government? In this case in Febriana, has the government done anything to protect her?
She was intimidated. She is not threatened.
Okay.
So I think what the government did was, well, nothing, because there was no crime yet. Unless you want to say that, this Front Pembela Islam doing something nasty, and then the police might act against it. But again, it was an intimidation.
Right.
It was an intimidation. This is not a threat. But there are more serious cases like being arrested or film screening being dismissed, discussion being dismissed. Those are serious, and I think the police is not doing enough to protect free speech, freedom of expression in Indonesia.
Right, and I guess my next question is, journalists in Indonesia, if they get threatened, if they get intimidated, their freedom of speech is threatened, do they have anywhere to go? Anywhere to report,
a lot.
Police?
A lot. First, they can ask legal assistance from LBH Pers, Press Legal Aid Institute. They can also report to the journalist union, whether it is Broadcaster Journalist Union or Print Journalist Union, Alliance of Independent Journalists, Indonesian Journalist Association. There are a lot of organizations which are ready to help these journalists. At the same time, there are human rights organizations which are also ready to help people who are criminalized for their free speech.
Okay, and now on to our last question. Indonesia, how do we compare in our freedom of speech and freedom of journalists with neighboring countries, maybe such as Singapore and Malaysia?
Well, there are some indicators, especially made by Reporters Sans Frontières, based in France. In Southeast Asia, Indonesia is probably number 1 or number 2. We are on par with the Philippines. Singapore is problematic because Singapore media have difficulties to cover their domestic problems, although it is increasingly getting better. But we are still having worse cases like in Malaysia or Thailand under the military law now, dictatorship. Cambodia is also another problem. Don't say about Vietnam, Laos. Brunei is another low category in Southeast Asia. So basically, Indonesia and the Philippines are still the best in Southeast Asia. Although I have to take a note that violence against journalists in the Philippines is worse than in Indonesia.
Right. So even though we have our issues, it's not as bad.
In the Philippines, they are being killed.
Right. Okay, but thank you so much for
Thank
your
you.
views, and thank you so much for coming. Thank you.